Can you hear me? I guess you can.
Just fine.
Um, before we have Jay Seema bring us up to that email, this is something that, there are a lot of people that watch these on the recordings of these, but they are not here and alive. And someone the other night, I didn't know they even watched these, and she sent a little poem having to do with self-effacement, where she writes, feelings are not always reliable. Love is always true. But for true love to come in, you must vacate the premises. It's Katie Rose. Feelings are not always reliable. Love is always true. But for true love to come in, you must vacate the premises. I thought that was beautiful. And so, Jay Seema, if you can bring up that, and let's see, maybe we can get Marta to read if this is the second paragraph.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
One of you wrote this to me in an email after last Sunday's Effort and Grace session. Darwin also talks about self-esteem of the spirit. What came up this morning was that as we grow in self-esteem of the spirit, it is easier to allow for self-effacement of the personality self. We can shift our identities to spirit connection to Baba and away from personality self. This clarifies succinctly the dynamic of moving from identifying with our personality self, ego, toward experiencing the state of self-effacement and drawing closer to Baba. Baba's definition of self-effacement is not easy to understand. In most people's minds, effacing oneself is equated with modesty, shyness, not putting yourself forward. Baba gives an entirely different meaning to the word effacement. It is effacing the totality of the personality self. It is effacing the totality of the personality self, not just withholding parts of our behavior in some way. In fact, it is possible to be very assertive in some circumstances and still be self-effacing according to Baba's definition, if we are taking our stand on the truth. One way of thinking about effacement, as mentioned in the email, is this. In essence, we are the soul or spirit, which is beyond our sanskaras, beyond our impressions. We are timeless and beyond space in essence. As Darwin would frequently say, but our consciousness has gotten identified with our personality self, the ego, which is made up of a finite bundle of countless impressions or sanskaras that we've accumulated over lifetimes. It is an imitation self, a false self, that is just mimicking and masquerading as our real self. And as we identify more and more with our real self, our spirit or soul, that is, the love that we are, Baba himself, we are automatically effacing ourselves, our false self or imitation self. As Baba has said, as we turn toward the sun, our shadow is behind us. We are turning away from our shadow self, so to speak. And in doing so, our personality self is being effaced automatically. It is like eliminating weed grass or just not watering it. As we turn more and more to the sun, Baba, we are tuning into our spirit self, from which flow our divine attributes or qualities, our better angels, directly from Baba. Among them, forgiveness, patience, courage, humor, honesty, empathy, compassion, generosity, poise, enthusiasm, and purity. Rather than forever battling the selfishness of our personality self, we are emphasizing our positive nature, our better angels, as we dissolve gradually in Baba's love and light. And as we experience our divine side more and more, we are more amenable to allowing Baba to dismantle our personality self, our ego, and replace it with himself. Not that this is a painless process, but with Baba as our companion, we know we are not alone in this.
Perfect. Beautiful. I hope that helps to clarify a little bit. I don't know. Is anybody, before we start in, does anybody have any questions about the effacing the being anything about self-effacement? Anybody have any questions or an example or something that would be might throw some light on that?
Jeff, actually, self-effacement means I used to always think that it is something like modesty or something like that, but here Baba says something different.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of gets conflated with being modest and you know, not putting ourselves forward and all that. But you could be, yeah, it's, I know, you know, I should say just that, you know, Darwin, I mean, it's really central to this book is self-effacement. And it's very elusive. I mean, it can sound, you know, intellectual and abstract, but it is really meant to be experiential. And when I was young, I used to hear Darwin and Mani and Erich talk about such things as being a nobody, as being the witness of oneself, of being no more. Erich would say, "Be no more." And in one of Mani's songs, as most of you have heard, there was the line, "And there is none of me, none of me, none of me." And I knew it wasn't something intellectual, but I knew intuitively that they might be describing an actual experience, but at the time when I was young, it was beyond me. But I kind of kept hoping.
Alexa, volume 10.
What's that? Anyway, I kept hoping for such an experience, and I put that before my consciousness with Baba for years. And then one day, unexpectedly, I would find myself in some inner place, some inner perspective, and I would say to myself, this is something of what Darwin was talking about. In fact, I really appreciated knowing in advance certain things that could be expected along the way. And one of you folks, asked about describing, defining self-effacement. So I thought of this example. I don't know if it'll work, but suppose I'm running for office, a public office, and my opponent is a very close race, and just at the last moment on the day that people are voting, my opponent circulates this false rumor about me, that I really actually live in North Carolina, whereas I'm living in South Carolina. But so I lose the election, and I'm in a situation where I can't actually. It's not illegal to say something false, like a false rumor, but it's, it's unethical, but it's not illegal. So there's nothing I can do. So my ego, what I had hoped, is completely smashed. This is like I'm being effaced. Now, if over the next months I hold resentment about that, then actually my ego is won and love has lost. But if I can learn to forgive that this my rival, my opponent, then love has won and the ego has lost. So anyway, that's kind of gives you how just in the core, how Baba, even through our everyday life, how he can is working on effacing our ego. But I'll give one other little story. This Meru used to share this. When she was about 19, Baba took the women Mandali to the movies. And before the movie started, Baba asked Meru to go up to to this family, an elegant family in the front of them, and asked if they would move. And so she went up and asked them if they'd move, and they did move. And then the movie starts, and they're into the movie a ways, and Baba asked Meru to go and ask them to move again. So she goes down to the front of the theater and asks these people to move again. Oh, it just horribly embarrassing. And she comes back and sits down. And then further into the movie, Baba asked her to go and ask them to move again. And she said she could not. Baba was displeased, but there was no getting her to do that again, to humiliate herself. But those are the kind of things that Baba, when you're with him, he would do. So, that's part of the effacement. That when you're with Baba, he does stuff like that. And you know a lot of the stories that Baba would do to make sure you didn't care what other people thought of you. But anyway, so let's see, can you bring Jay Seema, can you bring up the quote? But then also
Martha has
a hand there.
Martha has.
Yeah.
I just have a question with your example that you gave about the election. So does that mean if something happens to me in my life and it's upsetting, to let it go and not pursue it in retaliation in any way?
If you can.
Is that what you're saying by that example?
If you can forgive, then love has won and the ego has lost, because the ego is really not interested in forgiving.
But what if you can't forgive, but you're going to pretend that you're going to forgive so you can have practice?
That's all right. That's, I think all those are rehearsals for the real thing.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Did
you? Oh, you called on me? Hi.
Yeah.
There is a part of my personality that I've been working on, and that is like yesterday we got some fast food to go, and we got home, and this place is incredibly inconsistent, and they're not cheap for a fast food place. And I wanted to call them, and I wanted to tell them that it wasn't okay. And Terry talked me out of it. And she said, what about the next time we go there? You say, last time I got home and the dinner was just too overcooked. Can you lessen that? Oh my God, that sounded so easy and so painful at the same time, because it didn't solve my problem for right now. So Terry came up with the idea of making salsa and making all this stuff to make it right. Is this self-effacement? Me having to let go of my opinion of telling somebody about their business? Because I always think that it's important
Yeah.
that you tell people so they get feedback, as opposed to me never ever frequenting them again. I want them to be better because I
Yeah.
like them. But is that self-effacement?
I think what you're doing, you know, if you think that that's be helpful to the situation, I don't, you know, I think you're doing a loving thing. If it's to kind of stick it to them, you know, then that's a different matter. You know, I mean, if it's to lodge a kind of a negative complaint, I mean, you know, that has a negativity behind it. But yeah, you could help them. It could be helpful to them, and it could ensure that you continue to get your food there from there.
And I
It
just say,
also matters how you deliver it too, Diane, right? If you're pissed off, that's one way, but if you're a Terry attitude, then it probably will go over very sweetly, and they'll probably tell you you can have a free meal next time you come in, right?
Yeah,
You'd think after 35 years that would have rubbed off on me more.
It is rubbing off on you.
send Terry in to do the job.
Diane, remember, it's always the intent behind the act that counts.
Yeah,
If the intent is something where you feel that you're not going to hurt the person's feelings, but you're going to help do some creative criticism or whatever, then that's a good thing. But it's always the intent behind. So if you do it, if you come from a place of love and you do it with a good intention, perfectly fine. I don't see any reason.
yeah.
That helps.
And it's hard to kind of clear away the negativity to get to the love too. I mean,
Yeah.
that sometimes to get to your deeper intent. Yeah.
Also, on your story about Meru and the movies, I
Yeah.
never heard that story, but I heard the story about Baba making one of the Mandalay go up to the flight attendant and continually ask similar obnoxious kinds of questions.
Yeah.
But I remember, I thought the ending of it was every time you went to them, to the flight attendant, they had an experience of me.
Yeah, I mean, it could be very beneficial, anything you do for Baba, but they're not necessarily going to take it that way. You know, when Narina went up to the captain of that ocean liner
Yeah.
and told him gave him instructions how to speed the thing up or slow the thing down. I can't remember. She went 3 times. It was humiliating, you know, but that humiliation, I know Baba said to Bill LePage one time, you know, humiliation is good for you. It erodes away pride. Yeah. But go ahead, let's see. We haven't even got to the effort and grace yet.
Ron?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the fast food
The Zoom.
the call in to
Seema
let the people know that
They're on a Zoom.
Ooh,
Diane,
we can hear you.
oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
anyhow, it seems to me that there's a couple of things that if we practice, we're able to deliver the collegial criticism to someone, but as because they would need to hear it. I'm in a business where sometimes people have to call in and say, you did something wrong on my order or something like that. And if they don't call in, they might just never do business with me again. But if they do criticize the outcome of the order, it gives me an opportunity to rectify it and to do better the next time. So it is important, but tact and diplomacy are two things that make
Uh-oh. You've gone silent on us.
Sorry, Ron, I accidentally.
So
Okay.
you said tact and
Yeah, tact and diplomacy.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, in any relationship, those are two wonderful skills to try to master, and they can be done for Baba, because if we don't say anything, it might be out of being shy or out of weakness. We might just want not to be confrontive with somebody. But if we are not intending to be confrontive, but rather be tactful and diplomatic, then it's I think it takes it to a higher level.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Let's see. So Jayseema, if you can put up the next. How about Lauren? Are you up for reading?
Yeah, for
The
sure.
good bad scale. Yeah.
All right. We have been basing our value, our sense of self, on a scale of good and bad, but we must discard that scale as we rise above the dual level. Casting aside the good-bad scale does not mean that we discard responsibility or the values of good and bad in our actions. We must develop the good before we break free of it. Therefore, as we advance spiritually, we continue trying to do good while at the same time setting aside the burden of the good-bad scale. However, goodness is not meant to be a goal in itself, Baba says. Goodness is a means by which the soul annihilates its own ignorance. It is a byproduct of raising the consciousness and is a necessary step towards selflessness. As such, it is not meant to be focused on, but more or less ignored. Setting aside the good-bad scale is a gradual process. We may start out feeling, I did this, or I was good, or I was bad, but eventually we say, I did the best I could. We neither seek recognition nor beat ourselves up about anything. We rest in the knowledge that Baba has an image of us in which we are free of the gross level. We find that we are happier when we pursue this course of setting aside the good-bad scale and identifying with Baba's image of us. We experience upliftment of the spirit rather than of the ego, and we gradually move into freer levels of consciousness. In other words, we are expanding our consciousness and at the same time trying not to expand the I. It becomes a matter of personal unfoldment.
Beautiful. Anything to say to that? That's one of the major central themes of Bob as well is getting beyond good and bad to love. And if we get too stuck on being good, we we may be sacrificing the love that we could be expressing. Anyone to say anything about that? What I gathered from Darwin and Erich is that love has no impression, it's impressionless. And good and bad both come out of our sanskars or impressions. And even though good is good up to a certain point, but love comes in from the other dimension. And and so that's the direction we want to head. I remember Erich once saying to me when I was quite young, he said, there was a discussion going on in Mandalay Hall, And totally out of the blue, he turned to me and said, Jeff, the accumulation of virtue is not the goal. And, or good is not the goal. And so I went blank, and I thought, well, I'll just see what this trip, I didn't say, well, what is the goal? I said, well, let's just see what this trip reveals. So at the end of my trip, I did get this one kind of a vision, you might say. It wasn't an exalted vision, but I saw all of creation as this huge expanse, going from a lower elevation to a slightly higher elevation, from vice at the lower elevation, moving high, toward higher and higher and toward virtue. And across this expanse, there was a train chugging madly across this expanse. And the line that came to me is, the object is to get off the train at your earliest convenience. Don't just, the goal is not to just become more virtuous, it's to step out of the self altogether, step out of the good and bad scale, the virtue and vice scale altogether. Hey, he has to call on himself.
Yeah, Jeff. Like if you don't think we have done something bad, I mean, the Baba says we have to say, and Darwin says we have done our best. But if we don't think we have done something bad, which we did actually, how do we remorse? I mean, there is something we have to remorse, or right? But until we realize we did something bad, we don't.
How about, could you turn your volume up a little higher? I'm having a little trouble.
Okay.
Can you say that again? Go ahead.
Yeah, like say if we don't think we have done something bad, how do we remorse for it? Like, so in the past, we did something bad and we feel guilty. You often mention that instead of feeling guilty, we should be feeling remorseful. So,
well, I think of guilt as kind of up in the mind, and remorse is at the heart level. It does a thorough job. It's from the heart. The guilt just goes on. You can keep cutting back the guilt, but it never seems to go away. But remorse, when you feel like you were unkind and you hurt somebody, and you feel that in you, you actually feel like you've learned something that's valuable, and you can become a better person. But guilt is just, it's like a hamster on one of these running around in a cage. You can cut the guilt in half, and then you cut that in half and everything, but it doesn't do the job, because it's usually we've fallen short of our on the good bad scale. So we feel bad that we went short. Whereas remorse, I feel, is deeper from the heart. You feel like you've hurt somebody, or you've compromised your conscience. And it's much deeper, it creates a much greater change in us. I don't know if does that?
yeah, Jeff, thank you.
Yeah. In fact, I found that if I continue to feel guilty about something, I'm going to do it again. I'm keeping the seeds alive, and I'll do it again. Whereas remorse does a greater job of making a change in our heart, you might say. Let's see what Ronnie has to say to that.
Well, I'm thinking that this whole good and bad scale is coming from our judgmental minds. We have to make a judgment. Is this going to be good? Or if I do this, is it good? Or if I do this, might it be bad? And the problem, the reason is that it is coming from a place of limitation and conditioning. So Baba said, the mind that we have to get over is the limited mind and the conditioned mind. And when we look at what's good, just think about something that you think is good. It's based on, you know, what you think the culture is calling for, what you've been taught, what you've been indoctrinated with, your education, your hopefully what you feel it's good, but it's all still going to be pretty limited, and it's never going to rise above those limitations and the conditioning. But until we let it go and efface ourselves and say, that was the best I could do. You know, if somebody finds it, you know, thought you did something bad when you were thinking you were doing something good, which could happen, certainly, then we can efface ourselves and say, well, I thought it was good, but I can see your point, you know, and then a little humility there comes in handy.
Yeah. I think when we do something out of love, it's neither good nor bad. It's just love. And people may think it was bad or good, but you feel kind of confident, even if they didn't like what the loving thing you did. You don't take it personally, their criticism. You know, it's a privilege to express love. I find that's my. But let's see what we got. Timmy here, you know, from Myrtle Beach. He lets us in and out of the gate, you know, at the gateway here.
Yeah, so I wanted to say that I remember reading somewhere, I think Baba said this, that good and bad are in relationship to desire. What we desire is, what we want is good, and what we don't want is bad. But that's where they exist, in relationship to desire. Like if something happens and if we're not desiring it, then it's no longer good or bad. It's like we just I don't know, just like if we can deal with it, but if it's like, oh, I wanted it to be this way and it wasn't, if we can deal with it, like that would be good if it went the way we wanted it to go. But if we're able to accept the way things are going, we kind of rise beyond the good and bad, which is just in relationship to our own desires.
Yeah, no, very good. I mean, it has that reference to what we want, what we desire. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, any shall we let's go on to the next thing here and see. You know, Baba does say we go from bad to good to God. So it's not like the trajectory is mainly going from bad qualities to better qualities and eventually to love or God. Okay. Let's see. How about, hey, Tim, can you see that all right to read?
I can.
Okay.
You want me to read how much?
I am not good. You finished down that whole section there.
Okay. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. I am not good. The pendulum swings back and forth between I am good and I am bad until we see that we are neither good nor bad. Baba discusses the difficulty we often have of realizing that our goodness is a limitation. It is not that we dismantle our good, but that we dismantle our abode of identification with good by perceiving that it is yet another limitation that we must shed. Our identity is the problem. Before we realize the truth that we are neither good nor bad, we think we have to be one or the other. We tend to try to make a good ego rather than simply let the ego dissolve. It is a psychological secret that if we are willing to drop the assertion of good, we can slough off the bad. For example, if you have done something that makes you feel I am bad, you cannot just say, I renounce that I am bad. because it implies that instead I am good. This is what is meant by the pendulum swinging back and forth. However, you can say, I renounce that I am either good or bad. As spirit, I am free. A radical way to rise above good and bad is to counteract the false judgment, I am bad, by recognizing and asserting, I am not good. This is not another way of saying I am bad. It is a way of stopping the pendulum altogether by denying the ego stance of I am good. Only when the pendulum is stopped can we rise above the dual level. Applying the analogy of a chess game, we are using our reasoning minds to make certain moves to counteract those of the limited ego. To make this rather surprising chess move from I am bad to I am not good, we have to be willing to let go of the idea that I am good. In this way, we nullify both of those self-judgments and open the way to the truth, which is beyond good and bad. This is a big blow to the limited ego. It is all part of the chess game of what Baba calls the conquest of the unconscious.
Good. That was good, Tim.
Okay.
Well, that was not
I'm not
good.
good. I'm not good.
This is yeah, I hope this is kind of clear. What kind of makes it simple for me is if we're striving to be loving and contact the love within ourselves, we can leave the good and bad kind of behind. You know, but a lot of people get very identified with good, and then they invite upon themselves the bad in them. You know, you can, in other words, you can be very, very good, but if the bad is not getting worked on, it will erupt at some point. Sometimes Southern hospitality, well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but sometimes it can come around and bite you. Someone is very, very good. Well, here's the thing too. Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had this happen, someone who is very, very good, but you find that they don't really have much love. You don't feel warmth from them. They're good, but the warmth is, the heart is missing somehow, because they're being very dutiful, but not necessarily loving. So that it's an area that Darwin used to talk about in Erich. Anyway, anyone to say something to the I am not good?
One thing about the being loving is sort of like, what does it mean to be very loving? Where, in other words, to be very loving and to look very loving is not the same as being very loving.
Yeah, right.
You know, to really like, to be going for the love in the moment, you know, it's different than looking very loving. That's kind of the Southern hospitality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can be generous. There's a learned generosity, and then there's the real spirit of generosity that you'll find in someone. You know,
Yeah.
but the learned generosity can be a rehearsal for the real generosity. It has its value. I mean, Erich, I mean, this is taking away. When we bow before Baba, people bow before Baba or before Baba's chair. Erich said, if you were to see Baba with an open heart, your spine would not be able to hold you up. You would collapse. And the bowing that we do is a rehearsal for that moment. The real bowing is when you see Baba with your heart wide open. You cannot stay upright. This is Do you follow? You just collapse. And so by bowing, we're kind of practicing that until we get the actual experience. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a quote from Baba and I'd have to find it, but the sense of it was, when you are close to me, sparks of good and bad come flying out. Both the good and the bad come flying out and allow you to deal with them in my love. So it isn't just good, it isn't just bad, it's sparks of both good and bad coming to the surface, flying out of one.
In that intensity of nearness to Baba.
Yeah, the quote is in You and I, the book that Rick Chapman put together, and I have to find it, but that's kind of the sense of it.
Yeah.
Ron?
Yeah, this is reminding me of this poem that I really like. I probably read it 100 times, but I want to share it because I think it fits in with our subject. And the idea of being loving instead of being good or bad, I'm not sure that's it's easy to say, but loving Baba and loving Baba in others is kind of tricky business. So, but this I think helps. It says, I have kept you as my constant companion, and it has not been easy. In every situation, I try only to please you. I wonder how best to express your love. Should I do this or should I do that instead? I listen to every word I utter, trying to decide what it is you would have me say. I even keep watch over my thoughts in an attempt to ignore those which distract and to hold on to those which seem worthy of you. And what has been the result of all this? You call me to you and you smile. You say I have pleased you, and then you ask with genuine concern, are you all right? You seem so stiff, so unnatural. Relax and be yourself. Oh Lord, now I am truly confused. For how can I be myself when that is precisely what it is I thought I had to get over being? And why, if you really want this, do I see you frown each time I spontaneously express my petty ego? Oh, friends, listen to me, for it has cost me much to learn the secret of companionship. Do not attempt to keep him as your companion, simply become his instead.
Is that Steve Klein?
Yeah, Steve Klein.
Yeah.
The beloved.
Very good.
Oh, beloved.
Yeah, this whole a lot of it, like Darwin said, a lot of it's trial and error until you find your place in the good and bad and love, in a natural way. It's not it takes decades for some of this, I would say. Anyone else have anything to say to that?
Rich?
Well, it's apparent to all of us, I'm sure, but that we're really working at this the way Darwin describes it, and we're interpreting it as an opportunity to let Baba handle the busy work of our lives while we're remembering him. And so it's hard to discuss it kind of intellectually, but Darwin is pointing to the fact that we're just trying to allow that door to open or let Baba walk through, while we're working on life, I don't know if that made sense, but
Yeah, beautifully said, really. Thank God Baba's there to kind of relieve us from dealing with all of this stuff. The more we can open up and let him live our life, eclipse us. Okay, let's see. Patty, are you near can you read the next one?
Sure, I'd be happy
You
to.
better read the next two. They're pretty short.
Pretty short, okie doke. All right, sustained by grace. When we realize that the ego is clinging to a particular stance, we can make these kinds of counteracting chess moves. For example, instead of trying to protect and preserve our ego stance, we can assert, I am nothing. If we are not prepared to take the bold step of asserting our nothingness, we can say, I am sustained by Baba's grace, and therefore, as the ego self, am nothing. And in fact, we are sustained not by our goodness or badness, but by the Master's grace. Grace deals with the sin, weaknesses, by raising our consciousness and dispelling our notions of being subject to the causes of so-called sin. Because grace has within its context omnipotence, for grace is synonymous with truth and divine love. We must eventually stop basing our sense of who we are on illusory values of good and bad and accept being sustained by grace. Self-forgiveness. Self-forgiveness does not mean self-persecution. If God loves us, which he does, then we can also love ourselves. But we must also forgive ourselves. It's important that we do so because we are not guilty. We are not the body or the personality, but the untarnished soul. If we must have an ego stance, why not identify with the statement, I am purity, instead of I am guilty? We approach the beloved as nothing, no position, no merit, and no stance. We are open books to him, and we have made countless errors, but he is the Lord of mercy, who continuously forgives us for our misdeeds and our false selves. He does not measure us. We are the limitless soul. That is how he sees us. Our refuge is in his love for us.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, Jai Baba.
Anything to say to that?
You know, Jeff, I'd like to say a little bit just about what I just read, because I had a experience this past week that was a big challenge and a big test to my remembering the limitless soul that I am and the personality that was caught in a huge drama. And the drama was unfolding as bringing up a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of challenge, a lot of thoughts that kept racing through my head. And I'm going to give you a little bit of what was happening. My husband and I were driving up a 2-lane highway, pulling a 22-foot trailer just last Thursday on our way to Diamond Lake. And the truck started announcing, check the engine, alert, alert, check the engine, alert, alert, beep, beep, beep. And we couldn't pull over because we were in a 2-lane traffic, up a hill, mountainous, curvy, no place to pull over. It took a while. And he was trying to figure out how to do this without the engine blowing or whatever was going to happen. And hard to sustain the limitless soul and guided by the hands of God. And after all these years, you think I could do it, but everything else was happening and fear was arising and panic was happening. And so he had to go into oncoming traffic, get ourselves across just the 2-lane highway and into a safe spot, finally secure our safety. The truck, of course, was in a mess, and we were stuck there without cell phones service. And it became a very long story, which I don't really need to give to you. We're both okay. The truck got serviced, big tow truck. 9.5 hours later, because he had to hit check away with me with a cell phone without much of a battery, and I was stuck without any cell service. So we had no communication. State troopers showed up. Somebody called in something along the side of the road. And it goes on and on. It's really quite an interesting test of one's faith. And so I was in a trailer. My husband went hitchhiking with people. Didn't tell, I didn't know his phone wasn't going to work when he got there. It did work for a while, but he got put on hold with AAA, and there was a big mix-up. And fast forward 4.5 hours later, the State Patrol people came back twice, decided to take me to try and find him. I got a dog in the car. It's, blah, blah, blah. We find him, uncertain that the that the AAA is going to get there. All these things happen. But the point of what I'm saying here is I wept so much when the State Patrol people came back the second time and suggested they take me with them to try and find my husband. And because he couldn't contact me, there was no way he could, and I didn't know where he was. And my faith at that moment, I'd been chanting the 7 names of God the first time they knocked. The second time I was reading the end of Heather's book, and I was just trying to keep my focus on Baba, trying to trust that everything was in his hands, totally everything. And when it all worked out, I came to this horribly deep realization of how I had measured myself and blamed myself for not trusting in Baba. And that in itself had caused me way more grief than just settling into the situation. And I mean, granted, it was not the best situation. If you could measure good or bad, it was just a trying situation. And he'd put me to a test. And in my eyes, I'd failed, but just reading that passage that he loves us no matter how we are. And he knows who we are. So it gave me a glimpse and an opening to my heart to see more compassion for myself on the path and compassion for any situation that we're put in, and to trust more fluidly that he has our back no matter what it looks like. And it was just a really harrowing day that gave me a very, very deep lesson of myself and Baba, and how he has us held so closely and how he loves us so dearly. So I don't know if, that applied real well, but that is what reminded me of when I was reading that. So
Beautiful.
hey, Baba. Yeah.
I mean, compassion, self-compassion is so critical, and self-acceptance is really part of the loving relationship with Baba. and not being even judgmental of ourselves, which is, one of the fatal diseases of spiritual aspirants, I'm sure. Yeah.
So the truck died, but your husband lived? Is that what I got?
Yeah, well, the truck did die. I mean, we had to have it serviced. It was a very expensive day, needless to say, but we had to pay for we had extra towing, but we still had to pay like, $380 above that. And then, the truck wasn't here. It was like a $1,200 day, where things just kind of went out. But that was easy because we didn't get in an accident. Everything other than being highly hot, stranded in the sun, and nobody stopping. And it wasn't until I had a prayer in my hands that somebody stopped for my husband. Literally, I put my hands together and said, "Please stop," and the State Patrol people were angels. And then our tow truck driver, when he arrived at about 6:30. We got stranded about 1. He was an angel. My husband, I left then. I mean, I called somebody to come save me. I didn't want to wait another 2.5 hours. I was exhausted, so I came home. But yeah, it was just a very interesting thing. But he just uses everything in our lives, all our attachments, all our things, and you just it's beautiful. I mean, I can say that now. At the time it was harrowing. But
Yeah. Wonderful.
yeah.
Let's see. We'll just see what. Shall we go on to the next chapter? Well, at least we can start on the next chapter. How about Mayor Prasad?
Yeah, sure. Reprogramming our experience. I am whatever anyone takes me to be. Meher Baba. Divine grace supersedes all loss. It is not conditioned or dependent upon any precedent. This is what Meher Baba really is, divine grace. But we are in the habit of building limitations and finiteness into our consciousness. Through unconscious programming, stocking our subconscious with limiting beliefs, we have schooled our minds in limitations, and our minds have become tyrannical. Because of this, we put conditions on Baba's ability to bring about changes within us, and we also place limits on our own ability. All these limitations that we believe to be real are entirely self-programmed. We do well to keep in mind Meher Baba's words. All finitehood and limitations are subjective and self-created. We are engaging in such programming all the time, but for the most part are unconscious of it. Instead of being victimized by everything that comes along, we have to begin to understand what we are programming in our own minds, in our own consciousness, and discover where we can exercise the valuable use of faith and confidence. As Jesus said, "And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive." Meher Baba has said essentially the same thing on various occasions. Basically, that whatever one thinks of deeply, one becomes that. And he has indicated that if you want to be free, you will become free. And if you really want God, you will become God realized. That is why it is important to be aware of how we are programming things, how we are imposing limiting paradigms on our consciousness. Meher Baba says, "A new line in the divine picture is sketched only when some individual takes life forcefully in his hands, breaks up the old patterns, and insists on creating something new by his own inner vision." As spiritual aspirants, the new paradigm we need to create includes the supreme qualities of purity, self-effacement, and love. To counteract the old paradigm, we need to assert those qualities as our prototype so that this new paradigm can emerge.
Yeah, beautifully written. Anything to say to that?
Ron, you're on mute.
Yeah. Well, I was noticing when Patty was reading that she read something about, say, I am instead of saying I am guilty, say I am purity. And then in this last bit, it also talked about purity. And it reminded me of something that I thought of before, which is if you take, well, if you present somebody with a let's say a glass and it has water in it, but there's also little particles floating around in it, some debris of some sort, some garbage or some poison or whatever it might be. There's something in it. Quite often, we will look at it and what we'll see and what we'll claim it is dirty water, filthy water. But we have to understand that if we focus on the dirty part, we miss the fact that, in fact, mostly what it is pure water. The water will always be mostly pure water. No matter if you put a little guilt in yourself, you're still a pure self, but you have a little guilt in there, but it doesn't mean that you are guilty. You are purity with a little guilt in there. So I think, if we can really see it in that light, see ourselves and the situations that we're in that light, and not think that everything is pervasive, such that if you feel like you've done something bad or that you're guilty of something, that means you're a guilty person, you're a bad person. It's completely a delusion and a myopic trick. So if we can remember those things, it really can help us to not get caught up in it.
Yeah. There's a line from Rumi where he says, "You are so obsessed by the bad stitching on your sleeve that you fail to see the magnificence of your own garment." The ego kind of magnifies these things. Why? Because in magnifying these little faults, it gets to get center stage, it gets to take over.
Becomes important. You become
Yeah.
important.
And it can actually take over your whole life if you're not, as it does in some people. They feel guilty the rest of their life. Now, Marta, you had your hand up a little while ago.
Yeah, I did, and I decided that I cannot put it into words, but I do want to address something that Jasima brought up about when you do something bad, right, Jasima? Is that what you were saying? When you do something bad, how do you what's the word? Get forgiveness, or how do you make it okay? Is that what you were saying? And yeah, and I just wanted to just say this because it means a lot to me, and it really takes a lot of weight off that that Baba said that before that you even do anything wrong, in quotes, I've forgiven you. So the whole thing that I'm putting myself through is my own process of the ego thinking I'm bad. But Baba has already forgiven us before we've even done the thing that we thought was wrong. So I just wanted to share that with you.
But Baba said that forgiveness was already written into the script of this creation. But the funny thing is Baba made reference to this, that suppose you killed somebody in a dream, and then you come to Baba, I killed somebody in my dream last night. Will you forgive me? Yeah, sure. Well, this also is a dream. We just don't think it's a dream, but it's hard. I mean, you still have to process these things so they don't weigh on your consciousness. How to. I mean, Baba, the method he gave me is to send his love and his name toward those things in myself that I have, where I've fallen, where I haven't been loving.
I think for me, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Go ahead, yeah.
I think for me, just that phrase that Baba said just showed me how loving and compassionate Baba is. He just doesn't care about forgiving us. He just cares about loving us and having us remember him. You know, it just touches me so deeply that he's so loving and sweet.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, I interrupted you as
No,
usual.
no, yeah. And just to kind of get back on the track and not be my early life with Baba was trying to get after I screwed up, getting back on my feet again. So I didn't continue to be self-preoccupied, you know, get back on my feet. So which meant I had to forgive myself so that I could kind of go on. Because if I don't forgive myself, then I continue to be unkind and selfish and insensitive, you know. So shall we go on to, let's see, let me see what time it is. Let's read one more. Programmed suffering. Patty, how about you? Well, I already called you, didn't I? That's right. Now I can't see who's there. Oh yeah, Bob. How about Bob reading?
Okay. Programmed suffering. In some ways, we are our own worst enemies. We tend to unconsciously program negative suggestions, thus dissipating our forces without realizing it. The consequence is that we suffer. But Meher Baba says that 99% of human suffering is unnecessary. He goes on to say, through obstinate ignorance, people inflict suffering upon themselves and their fellow beings. And then, strangely enough, they ask, why should we suffer? I believe that the 1% necessary suffering is the poignant suffering of the surgery necessary to become free, to let go of limitation. Our self-imposed suffering persists because we do not trust God and turn everything over to him. In Meher Baba's My Wish, where Baba says, when you suffer, think, Baba wants me to suffer. I believe that he is telling us to turn away from our self-programming and be open to God's plan for us, his programming. It is not that Baba wants us to suffer, but that he wants us to put our focus on him as a way of stopping the cycle of unconscious programming.
Anything to say to that?
Rich.
The little Jaysima, you're very low. You need to turn your volume up. She's asking you, Rich.
I think he's not hearing. Rich.
Hello, Rich. That's an unusual expression.
Oh,
Can't hear what's going on for some reason.
Oh.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
I inadvertently switched the stereo with my knee and I couldn't hear anybody. Sorry. Well, I wanted to comment on that. And this is a really important thing where I'm at right now for me. And how do you have an identity and move through the world with other people and interact? Let's say you own a home and you decide you want to have someone mow your lawn. So you have to connect with somebody. You might ask friends, who mows your lawn? Well, you have to have an identity to ask that question and to make those contacts, right? So how do you, this is my problem, how do you do that? You know, and you're moving through this whole continuum. You know that Baba is reality. So I guess I'm like Marta. I don't know how to ask this question. Can anybody help?
Uh-huh.
The ego is essential for getting along in the world. It accomplishes many things that we need to do. So we're going to have it, but we don't need to take it seriously. That's one way of avoiding the problematic parts of the ego. Just don't take yourself so serious. Take oneself so seriously, and then use it for what it's meant to be used for. That's all.
Yeah, that like Eric used to say, you can express anger, but don't be angry. You can express your personality self, but don't be your personality self. I mean, that's easy. That's easy said, but it's not like to be have you effaced in your ego doesn't mean you're just some kind of cardboard character. You could be very expressive and still just not identify that that's me. We identify with the deeper part of ourself. Aha.
Okay, so going back to Diane's story. So she has a personality that wants to express to this owner of the restaurant that she's not happy with their service. If she's not identified with the anger or something like that, but is trying to express to them, listen, we love your place. The food is usually great, but we're really disappointed. What happened? Then she is using her personality, but not identifying with the personality that's angry. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Excellent. Yeah.
Oh, good, Diane. Yay.
Yeah. In fact, Erich used to and Val used to talk about mock anger.
Okay. Mock anger.
Where you use anger to express it, but you're not really angry. It's
that must be really a fine line to differentiate there.
Yeah. But sometimes I find if I express my anger or whatever, disapproval early before it starts to fester into resentment, I can do it. I can make believe, and it gets the job done. Or like I say, if I go to India and you get there off the airplane and everything, and everybody's grabbing your suitcases, So what I do is I can't speak quickly in English, express my anger, so I go, and I just yell anything. And they got so many dialects in English. I mean, in India, they don't know whether but it gets the job done. It keeps them away from just grabbing my bags and going off with them. So that's mock anger there, and it gets the job done. Okay.
Janet.
Yeah, well, that's funny to me, Jeff. Very funny.
It works.
But what I'm thinking about is that in this group, everybody is expressing themselves through some part of their being. We all are. That is uniquely who we are, and that's that thing about self-esteem of the spirit. I mean, because we all have somewhat of a different flavor as the spirit comes through us, I think. And I'm thinking, when I stayed in Marizad for a month one time. I mean, it was after Mani and Mara had gone, but the other ladies were there, and they have distinct personalities, and as did Erich and Merwan, and I mean, as we all know, from Bill LePage has had a distinctive personality self, but there, I'm trying to identify what I can't really quite identify, but it seems to me that there's that isn't really what the goal isn't exactly, not to like what Rich was saying about dealing with the guy who helps with the lawn, or just like the plumber who I need to get for tomorrow or something like that. I mean, that there's a certain naturalness about life, just like that poem that Ron read, that if we become too rigid in like trying to be something that we think Baba wants us to be, instead of flowing with something that is kind of a deep prompting that Baba touches us with, that it isn't so mental, it isn't so processed. It's just, I mean, like, I enjoy coming to this group a lot because guess what? I like Jeff's personality. I mean, but I don't.
I had to work on it for years.
No, but I mean, and maybe you wouldn't call that a personality. I don't know, but it's the way that Bob expresses through each one of us, and I don't know what we want to call that. It seems like that is something slightly different than the personality self as Darwin is describing it. And maybe I'm 100% off track, so correct me, please.
No, what you brought up, that's really valuable thing, that what you've said. And I think, and you're bringing naturalness. There's this Far Eastern expression, when the shoe fits and is comfortable, you don't have to think about your feet. You walk around all day, you don't even think about it. If you have the kind of natural view of who you are, then you can walk around and you don't have to think of yourself. But if you're trying to be somebody, trying to cultivate a certain personality, then you're thinking about your personality. But like little kids go around and they're not, they're going around, young kids, they're going around and they're not even thinking about their personality. They're just kind of going around and having fun and saying hello and everything. So they have a very healthy kind of attitude about themselves, which eventually they get educated out of, and you're in the teenage years and you're really worried about your personality. But I think what you say, it's kind of whatever kind of leaves you pretty flexible about who you are, so you're not rigidly in a particular personality stance. But I did find the Mandali very expressive, and Baba could have changed their personalities and everything, they could have had Alaba, Alaba, when people come, just stay relaxed, inquire how they're doing, be polite, don't get excited, but Baba left Alaba just as his natural self. And you know what I mean? So that's a beautiful thing. And all the Mandali were so different. There wasn't any, each one of them was completely a different planet altogether, But I don't know if that is kind of furthering what you were saying. But yeah. Hey,
would like to-
go ahead.
Excuse me, Jeff. I'm sorry. I was just going to chime in to Janet. Janet, I had an experience with Eric when I was in India, and I was in India for 6 months one time, and I just got so confused. This was when I was very young, and I kept thinking I had to be something different than who I was, because I thought I wasn't spiritual. I mean, how I ended up there anyway and staying there was always a surprise to me. But I didn't fit what I thought in my mind was spiritual, or I couldn't figure out who these people were that I fell deeply in love with, and they were all so different. And so I actually asked Erich one time, I just don't know what to do, Erich. I don't know how to be here. I just can't do it. And he, oh, Patty, Patty, Patty. And he does this little thing. And he just said, he doesn't want you to be anything other than who you are. He made you. The thing that you need to do is be you for him. And that's what I saw all the Mandali. They were who they were for him, 100%. I mean, of course, I didn't figure out how to do that for many, many years, but I do know that I am his, and he made me. So if I feel foolish or weird, I just say, well, you're the reason. I mean, I just throw it back at him. So anyway, that was
Really, yeah, beautiful. Hey, so here's what I thought thought we'd end by. I read this earlier, but I think this is a beautiful poem, and this is by a woman named Rose Ross Richards. She was the daughter of Kenneth and Josephine Ross, and he was the one who played bagpipes for Baba in 1931 there at East Chalcombe in England. And Josephine wrote a lot of beautiful poems, and she was there at Harmon on Hudson. Darn it, my throat. And but now here's someone who met Baba. She was 7 years old when she first met Baba. and I would say, and she's very natural. And it kind of even comes across in this poem, which I will read, because I just thought this is kind of a rare poem, and not many people would have a chance to even see it. So I thought I would read it to end. Meeting Baba by Rosemary Ross Richards. I was 7. Do I remember? Oh, yes, forever. All time ceased. I walked into a great circle of light and complete protection. No one, no thing, no sound. Only the essence and the voice of the silent one. How could that be? What did he say? Where was I? Enclosed in light where no harm could penetrate, no harm. I was lifted up. The circle was beyond where I could sense. Great love light blinded me with the enormity of this happening. I was 7. Do I now understand how incredible this event was on eternity's clock? Have problems vanished? No. Have challenges eluded me? No. Do I cry? Yes. Tears of joy, fear, love, hope for the less sensitive humanity. Have I been hurt? Yes, deeply by many people. Am I vulnerable? Oh, yes. Vulnerable to the pain my physically and mentally fragile family have endured. Vulnerable to the horror of man harming man and to anger and unkindness in our world. Why have I been so blessed? I have this knowing. I have love. I am so small. He is so great. What can I give? The only gift worth sharing, that in all the turmoil, misunderstandings, confusions, mistakes, wars, tumult, there is hope, there is love. How can I be so brazen? I have a responsibility because I glimpse God, the Lord Meher. He is real. I sat on the lap of God.
Could you send that out Jeff, could maybe when you have time in an email and send it
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, I'll send that. Yeah. Isn't that just beautiful?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
7 years old. I think she met
You
Baba
read-
in New
You
York.
read it, you really read it so well, Jeff, honestly.
Oh,
Thank you.
he's a beautiful person. And very natural, believe it or not. I mean, just she's not in any privileged way. She is feeling life, so, as painfully as we experience life. Not having met Baba doesn't protect her from all the ups and downs of life. Okay.
Thank you,
Let's
Jeff.
see.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. But let's have a few moments of silence and then maybe one last reading. Jai Baba.
Gee, Baba.
Anyone have a last?
Jeff, I wanted to know how to get on your email list because I don't think.
Oh, Jay
people are-
Sema. Jay Sema there, he knows how to do that. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, share me your email, Ron.
Send it to you. What's
Yeah, email, yeah.
what's
can-
your email? What email do I send my email to?
No, you just put it in the chat.
Put it in the chat and then he'll.
Oh, you meant the chat. Okay, I got you.
And anyone else who doesn't get the emails, don't hesitate. And then, Mayor Prasad, have you got a quote for us?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a short one. Let me read this. This is one of the quotes that Baba said to Robert Dreyfus when he visited in 65. Bear with humiliation, whether humiliation or reward, praise. Dedicate all to my feet. Whatever thoughts, good or bad, come into your head, offer them at my feet. Do not worry about them. I'll read them again.
Oh.
Somebody needs to be muted. Bear with humiliation, whether humiliation or reward. Dedicate all to my feet. Whatever thoughts, good or bad, come into your head, offer them at my feet. Do not worry about them. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Thank you all for coming out on this late night here on the East Coast.
Jeff,
Yeah.
I just wanted to, I didn't know whether you all knew or not that there was an earthquake that rocked Meher Mount this evening,
Yeah, that's
a 5.1. Yeah. I just
Yes,
got-
and it was directly under Merrimount.
Yes, yeah.
A
The
friend of
epicenter-
mine did the research
Yeah,
and he tracked it.
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So just ignore the word. It's
Sabine and Johannes, you doing okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, we're
Thank
good.
you. We are fine.
Looking forward to go back to bed, but yeah, good.
Yeah. Oh, you're gonna go back to bed, huh?
How they do that.
It's
It's-
still dark out there, you know.
Yeah, they're in Germany, so
Oh,
they're
It's 5:30.
5:30.
Yeah,
that's dedication, huh?
yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
But it's such a wonderful group, you know.
Yeah,
It is,
I mean,
yeah.
it's not hard getting up, and I'm not an early bird, but it's just so worth it to share with you all and hear your experiences. And yeah, I
You're
love
so
getting up.
thankful.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, it's wonderful having you here.
Yeah, we love having you guys here.
Yeah.
Love when you
Thank
read.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll let Jaysima get some sleep. And I had one thought. Let's see. I'm going to just give you a quote, and I'll give the background some other time. But it was one that it is kind of lost to all time because the lady never wrote anything down. But she met Baba when she was a young woman. She was a Christian, and Bob was encouraging her to, go on loving Jesus. But then he said to her, this is her first meeting with Baba. He said, but you have made one mistake in your spiritual life. You have put God in heaven. And until you find him in everyone you meet, your religion will always be lopsided. You have made one mistake in your spiritual life. You have put God in heaven. And until you find him in everyone you meet, your religion will always be lopsided. And she was like Kitty. That became her whole life. When you were with her, it was just you and her and the universe. She found Baba in you. Beautiful soul. Anyway, you folks all have a nice week. And Labor Day is almost upon us. Oh, Nasreen. We got to have Nasreen to say.
Right. Wait a minute. Before you end that,
Yeah.
on September 2nd, Jeff, you're part of a very important event.
Oh.
So you want to talk about that, even though you're leaving out our age group in the title?
XYZ.
Yeah, where's XYZ and baby boomers?
Where's baby boomers, Jeff?
Well, I just
Can't show up, Jeff.
You have to be a little poetic. Hey, here's what. Does someone have Margie's address? Because if you want to get find out about this, and she'll send you a little a video brochure. It's can someone type this in? It's Margie. No. Wait.
No, it's Margaret. It's Margaret.
Margaret Connor at thenewlifecoaching.com. If you send
it's Margaret.Connor, CONNOR 1998.
Wait, no, this is
a different one.
Oh wait, no, this is actually Margie Connor. Oh, sorry about this. Margie Connor at thenewlifecoaching.com.
Okay.
If you send that, she'll give you all the details. Made up a nice little thing. Because on September 2nd, we're going to have all these generations come on a video like this on a Zoom session, and then we're going to go into breakout groups. And these are people from all over the country, and there might be like 7 in a group, and there are going to be certain questions. One of them was, how does Baba show up in your day? How do you remember Baba? And there'll be, in each group, there'll be younger generation and older generation, and then the baby boomers. We'll drag those in. So, did someone put that on the chat?
Yeah, I put that in the chat, Jeff.
Okay. So I'm hoping that will reach her. And
You know-
so find out, and next time I'll remind me again. I need to kind of bring this up, but it should be really nice because you folks are all great about sharing things, and we're going to try to get Margie's going to get all the younger generation in there, and then we got us. So I think it should be really, you'll meet people that you otherwise you would probably not meet unless you happen to be at the center at the same time or at one of the Sahabas at the same time. Yeah.
What time of day is it going to take place on the 2nd, Jeff?
What's that?
What time of day is it going to
Yeah,
take
1 o'clock.
on September 2nd?
Yeah,
Cool.
1
Thank you.
o'clock. And it's called Generation XYZ Sahavas. Yeah. And well, there was one other thing, but
And Charles is going to speak too.
yeah, Charles Haynes is going to speak just the hour before.
Yeah.
That should be very nice. And then is followed by this. Okay, now Nasreen, you have to say goodbye to help us lull us into sleep.
Okay. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher
Baba ki jai.
Avatar Meher Baba
Baba ki
Baba,
jai.
DJ.
Okay, beautiful. All right, see you all.
Yes.
Much love.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Baba.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye, Mr. Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff,
Bye
next
bye.
week,
See you, Baba.
next week, let's not forget Ron's story. We
What's
forgot.
that?
Next week, let's not forget Ron's story.
We forgot Ron's story. Yeah. Remind me, I forgot about it
Oh,
completely.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that again? I'm sorry.
Ron said he had a very touching story that he shared with a guy, remember, at the Pilgrim Center?
Oh, okay.
And but he didn't tell us what the story was, but they were both kind of sobbing the Baba story. So yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, have you ever heard from Timothy Busfield recently? I met him once on the center.
Yeah.
He's from California. He was an actor, had a couple major roles on TV.
Yeah, we were roommates way back when.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
a cool guy. I mean, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, he married Melissa Gilbert, who was
Right.
the child star in
Little House on the Prairie, right?
House on the Prairie. Wonderful. She speaks beautifully about Bob.
Really?
They come here. It's, from time to time they come, and there was a film that was being shot up in about an hour and a half from here. So they were coming here every weekend a few years back.
Wow.
Great guy, wonderful. He's
Yeah.
a wonderful guy, and she's a beautiful soul.
Very
And
great.
she went into Baba's bedroom, and she said she had an experience there like she never had before. Baba's bedroom here in Myrtle yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.